Fourth party this evening is David Haynes, co-leader of the New Zealand Outdoors Party. Kia ora, David, can you hear me?
Kia ora, Martin, can hear you loud and clear, thanks.
Your 60-second opening statement as to why this election is important starts now.
Well, thank you. Well, as Chris and Materia have said, we're all here because we think there are some important parts of New Zealand which we can make better. And a fundamental part of that is our environment, our outdoors, and our right to enjoy those. We think they're being chipped away bit by bit, and yet this is a fundamental part of the Kiwi way of life: to catch a feed, to go and shoot an animal, to put meat on the table. In fact, it's often the way a lot of people, the only way a lot of people can afford to put meat or fish on the table, get out there in the outdoors. So we want to preserve that, not only for now, but for future generations.
Is climate change the biggest issue facing us as a species? What does the New Zealand Outdoors Party think?
Well, look, I mean, I read a lot of books about it. I'm not an expert. I did 11 years research chemistry and science. I'm not an expert on it. I don't pretend to be an expert about that for 1 minute. It's not an area I profess to know enough about to give any valid comment on.
Would you see, though, that it maybe has had effect on the outdoors?
In my lifetime?
Yeah.
Well, I think climate change is measured in hundreds of years, isn't it?
What is the biggest issue in the economy, and what do you think the New Zealand Outdoors Party would do about it?
Well, I think as Materia and Chris inferred, that there's an imbalance, and I think New Zealand is moving away from what we believe is its traditional values, where you could go out, work hard, buy a house, put food on the table, put the kids up onto school, and enjoy the outdoors. And those are being eroded bit by bit. Things are being commoditized. Political parties are now talking about, in effect, commoditizing fresh water. We've got governments now looking at task force to stop public roads, unformed public roads. We've got a government that's trading conservation land for economic developments like Ruataniwha. We've got a lot of sort of advocacy groups calling our game animals pests, when to all of our members and supporters, they're valuable game animals. They're a huge economic benefit. These sort of touchstones for New Zealand, we're losing them. And I think we're underselling ourselves.
Do you think tourism, that we're seeing some negative side to tourism with the kind of pressures being placed on the outdoors, particularly with infrastructure to be able to allow those tourists and then those numbers to move around? We've got, I understand, 4 million tourists looking to visit New Zealand next year. At what point do you say it's just too much?
Absolutely, agree with you. The Tourism Industry Association at their annual do in the winter, beginning of the winter, identified a 6% growth from now till 2025. Now, they did say they'd like to see that more value than volume, but there's no substance to sort of enable that.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. So far, most parties have said, oh, look, we'll just put a tax at the door when they come in. Well, that's great for the coffers. It does nothing for this sense that some outdoors people, particularly tramping groups, are being displaced from the outdoors. So we are, as far as I'm aware, the only party who are saying something quite tough, which is maybe we should have quotas on tourists in some areas. They already have it in Yosemite in the USA, they have it in Colorado. We have it on our great walks, in effect. So the Milford Track, it'll take you 2 years to get on there. We can extend that, and that's how you raise the value game instead of charging $20 for everybody and just continuing to milk the volume game.
What is the biggest issue in our society and culture right now?
I think, as I said earlier, Martin, that we're losing those fundamental Kiwi touchstones of going out in the outdoors and enjoying our backcountry. Hey, look, because of Spend a bit of time in and out of hospital with some friends at the moment. And all the doctors I spoke to, I must say there's a lot of English doctors out there. And so I'm naturally curious to ask what brings them here. And they all say, I could have got better weather in Australia. I could have got more money in America or in the UK, but I came here because of the outdoors, because I love hunting, because I love fishing, because I love tramping, because I like to go and catch a snapper. That is what we are losing.
What is the biggest domestic issue in New Zealand right now? Do you think it's water?
Yeah, fresh water. It's head and shoulders above everything else. We've seen its decline. We've seen this appalling fuel town mouse versus country mouse bullshit argument that's going on that does nothing to help. There's a whole raft of supermarket science going on about picking which bits of data support the other parties. And meanwhile, we've lost our taonga, our most treasured asset. Without fresh water, we have absolutely nothing. I think it's head and shoulders our most important issue. And I think taxing for it, charging royalties for it is the thin end of the wedge to commoditization and tradable asset. And that will go straight offshore along with all our other assets.
What does the New Zealand Outdoors Party want to do with water?
With fresh water, we want to stop Crown irrigation investments. Of the $540 million that's been assigned to it, only 2% of that has actually built any irrigation schemes. So if we carry on exactly as we're going now, we'll get 50 times more pollution. We want to stop damming diversion modification, whether it's gravel extraction, cross-blading, rivers. We want to stop that. We don't want to charge it for it. We think it belongs to everybody. We think we need to protect it. Future generations, we think there's far better ways of doing it than just sucking it out and replacing it with sewage.
Thank you, David. You have 30 seconds for your closing statement. Why should New Zealanders vote for the New Zealand Outdoors Party this election? Your time starts now.
Thank you, Martin. Well, thank you for listening to us. We have 700,000 sea fishermen out there. We have 120,000 freshwater anglers, 300,000 trampers, 34,000 duck shooters, 242,000 licensed firearm owners. We represent all the collective interests of over 1.3 million outdoors people in New Zealand. What we've got is precious, it's unique. We should protect it for now. We should protect it for future generations. We're the only party that collectively values and cherishes and promotes our outdoor way of life and its environment.
Thank you so much. Have a great election. Thank you. Good luck. Moving on to our fifth party.